Hey everybody, this is future Brayden. Just coming in quick to let you guys know that Brennick is not in this one. Uh, we had to record it a little later than usual, and Brennick does public transit. He had to get up at like 2:30 in the morning or something, and I didn't feel like hearing about how he had killed 40 people in a bus accident, so he sat this one out. But we're joined by Zac Loughman today, and this one is a little lazily edited as it was recorded right before a trip over to BC, so kind of had to put it together pretty quick in order to get released on time. Nevertheless, hope you enjoy. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Creature Crossing podcast. This is episode 5, and today I am joined by Zac Loughman. Is that the correct pronunciation?
That is the correct pronunciation.
Perfect. Also known as Dr. Crawdad.
Yes.
Right? Perfect. How are you doing today, Zac?
I'm doing great.
Perfect.
Let me back that up. Today was a little bit exhausting at work, so I'm happy to be talking about whatever the hell we're talking about today, because it would be better than what I talked about earlier in the day.
So there you go. That's about as far as I've got it too. Is whatever. I have a couple notes here that I'll bring up, and then we'll let her shoot. Now, do you prefer? I'm going to assume not, but you shouldn't assume. Do you prefer Dr. Loughman?
Zac.
Yeah, okay,
that's me.
Perfect. Because I meant to ask that earlier. Where I was like, oh, to be respectful, I should probably start by calling him Dr. Loughman, and then that I forgot.
No, Zac is totally fine. I mean, some people really do care if they've got the PhD to be called doctor, but I'm not one of those. I actually like it when people call me Dr. Zac. Not that I want to be called Dr. Zac, but I feel like that's more. If you got to throw the DR in there, just put it before Zac. But Zac is totally fine.
Dr. Zac over Dr. Crawdad. Do you have people who call you that, like on the regular?
Oh yeah, my students will. They'll rip on me a little bit in a playful way, not a bad way.
Yeah.
But I have I've been out, at some of the larger herp shows that we go to for Clubbered and Clubbered Radio, and people be like, Dr. Crawdad, and they're being serious.
That's cool. That's cool. That's like, better than mine.
With Zac, it's we don't have to use that. So
I got one a couple weeks ago, or a couple months ago, maybe now, because I'll run educational programs for like birthdays in schools and stuff. And I had one where it was a birthday party, and I was waiting downstairs. Parents are like, "Okay, we'll go get the kids. We'll go get the kids." The kids came down, and the birthday kid looked at me and said, "Oh, the clown's here," and I was like, "Oh, come on." Like,
yeah,
that's. I mean, yeah, I guess, but like, come on.
Yeah, there you go.
That one was funny. That one was pretty funny. I'll take anything over the clown, but it is what it is, I suppose. So I was I was trying to be a little professional and doing some research on you. I've listened to your show, Clubbered and Clubbered Radio.
Yep.
And you got a lot of stuff going on.
I do.
You have a lot of stuff. You're a teacher, science communicator with the podcast and all the other stuff you do, writer, you breed reptiles, as well as being a conservationist. A lot of your work being with, as your name suggests, crawfish, crayfish, crawdads, yabbies,
all the above
bugs. Yeah. Yep. So can you I'm really wanting to talk a little bit about that before we delve into some of the reptile stuff. So can you give me a little bit of an overview on your work with crayfish and what that entails and how that started?
Yeah, it's better to start where it started, because a lot of people are like, how the hell did he get with crayfish? What? So I entered graduate school at Marshall University in West Virginia. That's where I'm from. And my advisor was this wonderful man named Dr. Tom Polly. In fact, Polly just put out, like within the past month, the second edition of Amphibians and Reptiles. And one of the greatest honors of my life is that he asked me to be a co-editor on that book. So it doesn't get any better than that as far as I'm concerned. With Polly, I was in grad school down there from 03 through 05. And if we all kind of go back to that time, that's when Steve Irwin was at his absolute peak. Jeff Corwin was at his peak. Mark O'Shea was on Animal Planet, and it was very, very, very trendy to be a herpetologist. And the job market was the herpetology job market's usually saturated because a lot of people want to do it and there's not that many jobs. But back then it was super saturated. And I was in my advisor's truck. We were driving somewhere in West Virginia and we were just kind of BSing the way you do when you're on a field trip. And Dr. Pauly said to me, I've been watching you and you can nerd out about anything. Like it doesn't matter what it is. And I know you like the snakes and the reptiles, but you've got to you've got to get a job and feed your family. And I was one of those people that got married really young. I married my wife right out of undergrad. So I was 23 and she was 22. We had no idea how young that was until recently. We're still, happily married. But, and I was actually nearing the end of my grad degree thinking I had about 10 months left. And so when he said that, it resonated with me. And so I thought I'll keep the herps, even though I'm here getting a master's degree in herpetology, I'll keep the herps kind of for fun. And then I'll find some other animal that I can kind of be a big fish, small pond. And I can honestly say professionally, that was the greatest advice anyone ever gave me. And so I dabbled with a lot of animals. They were all invertebrates because I realized that the inverts of the world get very little love compared to the verts.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so there were ample opportunities in invertebrate zoology. And I realized while I was at school that you can't just pick any organism if you want to make it lucrative and base your career around it. You've got to pick an organism that has funding and that has research needs. And so I started off with leeches, which a lot of people don't know. There was a swamp that one of my co-grad students and I would go to for his thesis and catch frogs literally every week. And there were these very large leeches that we would stumble, and I thought they were fascinating. I now know they're a species of Hemopus. But at the time, I didn't know what the hell they were. People called them goose leeches, and that's not actually what they were. But I brought some back, and I knew that people were doing like pharmacopoeia with their saliva, and I thought, okay, there might be like an angle here. They actually rasped their way through the 1 gallon baggie I had them in, got loose in my
Nice.
refrigerator, and my mom, we found them in the eggs. Like we opened up the eggs, and there were leeches in the eggs, and that was a no-go. Like
Yeah.
Kathy was like, yeah, we're not doing this. I was like, okay, that's fair. So leeches were axed. I then bounced to centipedes because if you actually look at centipede biology, they're awesome, charismatic, highly predacious, wonderful things that are very metal, but no one studies them. The like field of myriapodologist is about this big. And I realized though they're awesome, there may not necessarily be like a field of study here that would be lucrative. And we were doing salamander trapping around this same time. And it was in the spring. And I grew up with crayfish in local streams. I would catch crayfish. I wasn't like enamored with crayfish the way I ultimately would be when I was younger, but I was the classic animal nerd kid, dinosaur. I mean, I still have a dinosaur phase. I'm fortunate enough to teach vertebrate zoology. And when I teach vert, about 40% of the semester is dinosaurs just because I can. That's
Yeah.
the only reason why.
I don't know if you can tell, I don't like dinosaurs at all.
Yeah, I know you hate them.
I think they're lame.
Mm-hmm. So we were pulling traps up out of these vernal pools, and we were getting crawdads I'd never seen before. And they were cool. They had all these different colors, and they were really scrappy. And one thing about animals is that I like animals that fight. I don't like cute, cuddly things or passive animals. They're cool. Don't get me wrong. But if they got a little bit of spice in them, I like that. And crayfish, obviously, they do the Keeley. It's called the mural spread. I know that now, where they put their claws up like this. And so I was kind of getting into them, but then I have to thank my co-graduate student at the time, Vanessa. She had a thesis where she had set up a drift fence around a pond and was tracking the phenology of amphibians with this pond. And she had this awesome data set where like she had gotten when the frogs were going in, when the frogs were coming out at the species level. All these salamanders too, and there were a couple rare salamanders that were in the pond. And on this spring evening, it rained, which makes your amphibians move. Well, it also made these crayfish move. And so the crayfish ended up in the pitfalls along with the salamanders. That's very bad for
Uh-oh.
salamanders. And so she caught about 200 burrowing crayfish, and they eviscerated all of her salamanders, and she threw all of them into one 5-gallon bucket. The next day, I was sitting at my desk in the grad student office, and she came in, and I had the reputation of the guy that would identify things. Like a lot of the students that were in my lab, they wanted to do more like management, conservation. They weren't taxonomy nerds like me. And Vanessa came in, she smashed the bucket down on the desk. I mean, like I thought she was gonna like hit me. She was so angry. And she wasn't mad at me. She was mad at the crawdads. And she's like, figure out what the F these effing things are. They just effed over my thesis, and then stormed out of the lab. And I opened up the bucket, and there were like all these burrowing crayfish with their claws up, and they were making these weird gurgly noises. And I was like, okay, I'll figure out what you are. And just to keep this from being a 2-hour story, the next 6 months, I felt like I was cheating on herps. Like I would go out, and I was at school to get a master's with herps, but I was reading about crayfish and learning how to identify in crayfish. And I'd go off on a herp trip and then sneak off to the creek and try to catch all the crawdads and bring them back to my apartment, where I would try to identify them. And I learned very quickly that they were like the perfect fit, because they're big enough that all the methods I learned to study like lizards and salamanders and frogs, I can apply those to crawdads. But at the same time, I like natural history, just learning about the who, what, when, where, why of an animal. And the natural history of these of crayfish was like wide open. Nobody had really intensively studied them the way that lots of animals were studied. And so I could take my herp methods that I had learned, I could apply them to the crayfish, and then I could, they'd be a really good animal to focus on. And then the other thing is, which nobody knew, is that they are like among the most endangered animals on our planet. The International Union for Conservation of Nature, they always flip and flop in the top 5 most imperiled animals that they've done their conservation assessments on. And so that it's sad that this is the way the world works, but if you're imperiled and you're endangered, that means there's probably funding to save you. And then the thing that's really cool about crayfish is that they're part of our culture. Like, I don't know how it is in Canada, but down here in Appalachia, if you grow up outside, which is pretty much everybody, you go to the creek, you flip over rocks, and like crayfish are big game for every 10-year-old that lives. And so there's this kind of cultural piece. And so I kind of quickly realized that I'm going to segue over to crayfish. And another thing Polly did, and I'm a graduate advisor now, and I understand how amazing it was that he did this, is he saw that this was lucrative for me. And he also realized like he's actually listened to me. And he gave me a counter in the lab, and he basically said, fill it. You can put tanks in there. You can get your animals, set up your own little crayfish area. Just make sure you write your thesis on your herps. And so I did that. I wrote my thesis. My thesis was on how reptiles and amphibians use abandoned strip mines in southern West Virginia. But then I was doing the crayfish thing. And so then I left, got my job at a nature center as an environmental educator, was there. Part of my gig was writing grants. I got a couple grants to study crayfish, so I realized I could do that. And then my former professor, who was the chair of the department at West Liberty at the time, West Liberty State College, called me and said, hey, we have a position here. You don't have to get your doctorate. You've got your master's degree. Do you want to come up here and teach? And I was like, hell yeah, I do. So I went to West Liberty, and then I, started writing more grants, started my crayfish lab. Things were going nicely. And after being there a year and a half, that same guy walked down the hallway and said, if you don't get your PhD in the next 3 years, we're going to have to fire you because we want to become a university and we don't have enough PhDs. And so I was like, okay, what the hell am I going to do? And I reached out to the West Virginia Department of Natural Resources and said, do you want a statewide survey of crayfish? Because I need a dissertation. And the rest is history. And I've been studying crayfish now without a break since the summer of 2007. So we're almost to
Wow.
20 straight years.
Wow.
So yeah, that's kind of the backstory. What was the other part of the question?
I don't fucking know.
There you go.
Who cares?
Yeah. But the other thing that's really cool about crawdads is people don't realize how many there are. I get this all the time when I tell people I'm a crayfish biologist. They kind of look at me side-eyed and they'll say things like, "There's more than one."
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's more than one. We have more than one. We actually have just over 700 species now. And in reality, when we get done naming them, I would not be the slightest bit surprised if there's between 900 and 1,000 species of crayfish on our planet. And I have described 15 new species of crayfish, and I did not go to school to be a taxonomist. That's the fun thing about working with inverts that people don't realize is the vertebrates, they get all the love. So there's like, people studying the hell out of them. Now, there are vertebrate groups that don't get studied, please, but there's way more people studying snakes than crayfish. So there are currently on planet Earth about 8 of us. Out of 7 billion people, there are 8 people that are describing crayfish. I am one of maybe 3 people in the US or North America. There's a handful of people, and there's another 3 down in South America. There isn't really anybody in Australia anymore, and that's the other area
Wow,
of
really?
yeah, there were a couple people there, but I've not seen them doing much. And then there's a couple people in Europe that are working on their fauna, but that is it. Like,
Hmm.
and so these are big, charismatic animals. These are not small, little, dainty creatures. They're the largest arthropods in you take terrestrial freshwater arthropods in North America. Crayfish are the largest. And the largest species of crayfish in North America was described in 2011.
Wow.
So, so there's, you can do that stuff. Uh, I've gotten to do all the science I ever wanted with these animals. I put radio transmitters on them and track them around a river. Found out they're way more complicated in their behavior than anybody thought. The burrowing species, my lab's done a lot of work with burrowers, and I never intended on this happening. I just like the burrowers because you find other things down in their burrows. They're really colorful. They're just freaking weird. It's this aquatic animal that lives in the middle of the forest in a burrow. And so they can like get out of the water because they dig a burrow that goes down to the water, groundwater level. So that's how they're able to persist where they do. And when it rains, they just come up and wander. And it's this crazy evolutionary gamble where you're wandering around while it's wet. But if you wander too far, you're going to die. But every now and then, when it dries up the next day or two, but every now and then, one of them wanders into another wetland, and the next thing you know, boom, you got a new population and possibly a new species. So, but the big deal with them is people don't like to dig, and I don't mind digging. Let's just dig holes. And somehow the lab has now gotten the reputation for being the burrowing crayfish lab. So a lot of our research has focused on those animals. I'm currently describing 3. I'm going to be submitting 3 manuscripts this year for 3 new species of burrowing crayfish. We've set video cameras over top of their burrows and recorded them. They're like little rancors. They're like the best thing ever. They just sit there, and anything that comes near the burrow, it's like F around and find out. They try to eat it.
Yeah.
And,
That's cool.
and so, but yeah, that's what we've done. I love them to death.
Yeah. I could see why I did a very limited amount of research on crayfish in general before having you on, and I very quickly learned that they're more than you'd think.
Yeah.
And so I was really interested in the fact that I learned that out of the two, I know that the South American crayfish or the Southern Hemisphere crayfish are pretty different from our Northern
Yes,
Hemisphere ones, in that I think they're different. Are they different families or
totally different families.
yeah? Okay, that
Totally
was
different
different
super
families.
families. Like
Yeah,
they're
so
very, very different.
I thought that was cool, and then I'm looking at pictures of them, and then I was like, okay, but why? Like, I'm trying to figure out why, and then I looked in a little deeper, and it was because of like, aside from genetics, like there's a little thing on their nose or something. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, okay, well, I'm moving on now because that's a little above me. But
yeah,
and then I got to looking at the only crayfish species I could find that lives where I am, because I'm super far north, was called the northern clearwater crayfish.
yes.
Don't know what the genus is, but
I'm pretty sure that's Faxinias.
yeah, I bet, you know what? I think it'd be, I mean, you're down there discovering all these crayfish. You got to get up here and figure out what the hell's hanging out up here. Like, I bet there's
Yeah.
some weird ones up here.
Hmm.
And there's lots of them. Like, my parents live on the lake there, and they're like, at night, we'll all just, they have a dock goes out to the lake, and we'll, 1, 2 in the morning go out there with a flashlight and just see what we could see. We see little pike and little burbo, and there's a invasive bullheads up here. I'm a huge catfish nerd, so I like to see them. But
Hmm.
lots of the cat or lots of the little crayfish too, and they're always, as soon as the light hits them, they're like, "Let's fucking dance, like let's go!"
Yeah.
And they're trying to fight the light and stuff. They're cool little
Hmm.
guys, and yeah, like I could definitely see. I mean, me personally, I've always had like the people always make fun of me. Like, I've worked at zoos my whole life, and then whenever people ask me what my favorite animals are, it's always like, yeah, it's garter snakes, water snakes. I love anoles, and I like, you know what I mean? Like, it's very simple. It's the stuff that
Yeah.
everybody else is like, well, why? Like,
Hey,
and
I'm on Team Nature Scene too, dude.
oh, absolutely, dude,
Hmm.
they're the best. And
Yeah.
so to see people interested in animals that are, to the general public, less interesting
Yeah.
is really cool, because I find that every time I look into those animals, they're the total, like, if like they're the total opposite. They're not even close to not being interested. And nature
Yeah.
scenes are a perfect example of a snake that is, despite being super successful and everybody has seen them, so they're garbage backyard snakes. They do a shit ton that other snakes aren't doing. They have a
Yeah.
ton of adaptations that other snakes do not have, but people look right past that, right?
Yeah.
So I was really interested in talking about the crayfish. Um, you do you keep crayfish at home?
I have in the past.
Yeah.
So it one of the bizarre things about becoming an invertebrate zoologist is that it's it's very it's just part of the gig that you have to have specimens in jars. And
Okay,
so
that makes sense.
you have to have animals that are in alcohol that you preserved. And a lot of times when you're out in the field collecting these animals, especially the burrowers, you'll end up in a situation where you just can't get adults. But the little juveniles are way easier to collect because they're naive and they come up when you try to dig the burrows. And so I thought about this a couple times. I was like, that's just so freaking twisted. I've raised so many of these little boogers and then been like, okay, you're the right size, and then into the jar of alcohol you go.
Yeah.
And so, um, uh, so I've done that a lot. And if you do that with a snake, or I wouldn't even think about doing that with a snake
I was
or a
gonna make
turtle.
that joke. I'm glad you did.
But I with the crayfish, but we just opened up a facility at the university. It's called the Appalachian Aquatic Conservation Center, and we have a propagation lab for crayfish. So right now at the university, we have two, I don't know, between 100 and 200, and then maybe 30 different species are there. But those animals are mostly there for science and
Yeah.
outreach. We have a crayfish that lives here in the northern Panhandle, West Virginia, Western PA. It's called the blue crawfish. It's its common name. Cambarus monongalensis is its name, and it's blue with bright red claws. They are
Cool.
they're like 15 feet behind my conservation center. There's a colony of them, and so we we study them just because they're awesome. That's like the only
Hmm.
real reason why. And there's another biologist at West Liberty that was my former postdoc. He's now a professor. He just wrote a book called Crayfish, Crawfish, Crawdad. And I highly recommend you get that book if you're even remotely liking this conversation, because it's kind of like what you said with the podcast. There was not a book that just introduced people to crayfish biology. Uh, and he is also named Zach, which is really convenient. And so Zach Graham, Dr. Graham, he wrote this book, and it's wonderful. And it's cheap. It's only like $20.
Nice. I like
So,
that.
anybody can get it, and I highly recommend it. It's written in narrative form, but yeah, he has blue crayfish all through that because that's his favorite too. So
Cool. Yeah, I like those. The more book, I'm obsessed with grabbing books. My collection's pretty small now, but like whenever I see a weird one, I'll grab it. Like I got like all my big money books are all the Natracine ones,
yeah,
naturally, right? Because that's what I
hmm
specialize in. But yeah, I'll have to look that up. I'd like to read about that because, like I told you, when I was researching the crayfish, and as soon as I was trying to like, okay, so how do I tell the difference? I was like, okay,
that's all in his
it
book,
scared
man.
me. It scared me, so I backed up a
Yeah,
little bit. This is a little
yeah,
too
that's the
intense.
number one reason why. There's two reasons why there's not that many crayfish biologists in the world. Reason number one is there really wasn't a lab that you could go to and do crayfish taxonomy, um, ecology, conservation. There were people that would give you that opportunity to a certain extent, but they wouldn't. But like you couldn't. They didn't just do crayfish, and so now we have that lab, and there's a couple other labs, fortunately, across the country where you can do that. And then the other thing is that the learning curve to identify them and the terminology is horrendous. Uh, and you just have to be okay with getting things wrong until you get them right. And I know that
Gotcha.
might not make sense, but anybody that has tried to do arthropod identification uh, knows what I'm talking about, because there's all these terms, and you're like, what the hell is the central projection? What does the Crawdad perspective of the central projection? What's the Europod fan? What's the epistome? What's the fovea of the epistome? Like, these are all things that now I can just point all that stuff out like it's, nothing. And when I realized, thank God I realized it early on and didn't get too discouraged, is like, I will learn this inevitably. And when I do learn it, you know, I it I just know what the bits are now. And and
Yeah.
and once you get that down, crayfish are actually really easy.
Okay.
You
Gotcha.
To be a crayfish biologist, though, this is important. You have to be okay with things being gray. Like, if you like animals where you can look at them and say with 100% certainty that's a blah blah blah, crawdads are not the group for you. If you're a type B person, I'm pretty freaking type B. I can be okay with it not being like, I'm 90% certain that it's this. That's crayfish biology, because there's a lot of this kind of nuance area where it's very hard to capture what makes them different. Um, and in invert zoology, we have this word. It's a German word. It's called Gestalt. That's when you can look at something and say that's different than that. But then somebody asks you, well, what makes it different? And you're like, I don't know what the hell. I can't tell you what makes it different, but I know that's different from that. Well, that's a Gestalt difference. And so that happens a lot with crayfish. Um, that fact, I just described to you my career.
Gotcha.
So
I
anyway,
wonder. I kind of wonder, in as far as people who study inverts, who has it worse. Where I've recently learned that individuals who study flies, like true flies, have to rely a lot on the hairs on the body,
yeah, yep,
and as well as um, people who study beetles have to look at their penises half the time to
yes,
figure out.
lock and key speciation, baby.
Yeah, so that's
hmm
awesome. Bugs rock,
Yeah,
invertebrates rock.
hmm
I also saw a funny thing, not to go too far off of a tangent recently. There's a Facebook group that's pretty popular. You might even be in it. It's called Wild Green Memes for Ecological
yes,
Beans.
yep, I'm in
And
that.
they were, yes, of course you are. That group rocks.
Uh-huh.
And there's, I guess people always joke that like the shrimps are bugs, right? Like, and
Yes,
crayfish are bugs. And I guess I didn't look into it, but I guess now it's reversed where bugs are shrimps, and
Yes.
everybody's going crazy about that now. I don't know what it means, but I'm all for
That's
it.
the pancrustation hypothesis, where
Okay, is that new or is
yeah,
that
where
just getting some
basically it's
attention?
like, oh crap, maybe insects aren't that special. Maybe they're just their own clade of crustacea.
That'd be
Um,
cool.
yeah, and
Isopods
it
are ahead of the game.
yes, there you go. So anyway,
Yeah.
so yeah,
So
but no, I love the crayfish. And studying them is a lot of fun. You know, I tell people all the time. I People think you've got to get in an airplane and go to Peru in rainforest to find like new species. I There was a time when I was doing a survey in Tennessee. In Tennessee, where Alabama meets Tennessee, in the southern Appalachians, that's like the epicenter of crayfish biodiversity. Uh, and I was down there with some students about a decade ago now, and we were seining, just using a kick net to catch crayfish. And we were in this little unassuming creek. Didn't like Nothing about this stream made it special at first glance. And I had been I was tasked with going down there and literally finding a species they thought was undescribed. And so we're kicking up animals and uh, getting them into the net. And we pull the net up, and there's 4 different types of crayfish in the kick seine, which is a pretty decent diversity for a stream. And one of my students was like, "Loafman, what are those?" Because we knew what we were looking, and I knew like in that moment, every single freaking crawdad in that net did not have a name. Like they were all undescribed.
nice.
100% of what we were looking at was undescribed. And so, but then I thought, there's no way. This is freaking Tennessee. Like I'm an hour and a half from Knoxville. You know what I mean? But sure enough, I reached out to a couple of the people that work down there with that fauna, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we know about that stream. We
Yeah.
don't sample that stream because it makes us feel bad about ourselves." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Well, it's the first time in my career I was stumped. Like normally, like I knew what genera they were in, but I knew what complexes they were probably part of, but that's freaking Tennessee." And so that's one of the things that makes being a naturalist, a natural history nerd, and studying crayfish so much fun is that I know that with my career I've made discoveries, and that's what scientists sign up for when they become a scientist. So uh, now the irony is, now when I find new ones, I'm a little bit pissed because I'm like, oh damn it, here we go again. Because it's like if I can focus, it usually takes about 2.5 years of work to go from standing in a river in my Chacos with oh, is this new? If it is, and I want to pursue it, it takes 2.5 years to get to the paper being submitted. So uh, that's the joy
Wow.
of being a crayfish biologist.
It's the day of recording is Charles Darwin's birthday.
Yes, it is.
And it really brings Charles Darwin. I constantly am thinking about how much he hated a lot of the animals he worked on,
Mm-hmm. Worms
barnacles,
and barnacles.
earthworms,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not sure if he ever did look into crayfish, but if he didn't, I sure am glad he did
Well,
not
he
because
didn't look into crayfish too much, but if you know the history of origin and all that, Darwin's bulldog, which was Thomas Huxley, Huxley is, at least I say this, he's the father of crayfish biology because he wrote the first book on crayfish titled The Crayfish. Really good title. Um,
yeah, very good.
and he basically was the first person to do a taxonomic revision and write this guide, and he really focused on the anatomy and the physiology of crayfish. But I love that Darwin's bulldog is the father of my science. He's also considered the father of science education, which obviously is very important to me.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
no, so that there's like an adjacent tie with crayfish to Darwin because Huxley was the guy, if you know the history, that would get up in a public square and sound off against Owen, who ironically the father of paleontology is also the father of creationism. Uh,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
There's some
they would
crazy
do those.
story. If you go back to those early naturalists, it's worth looking into the history because there's some fantastic stories. They seem maybe not more dramatic than a lot of our sciences today because our sciences can get pretty dramatic in today's,
Yeah.
but they're definitely more interesting drama.
Oh
I
hell yeah.
think like come on,
Hmm.
they're awesome. But I definitely I would if let's say just speculation if or not speculation but if in a other universe if Darwin was the one who was like I'm gonna figure these crayfish out, I would have loved to have seen the quotes he came up with
Yes.
about the crayfish because you know he would have been like I hate crayfish. Like
Yes. I hate these little bastards. Yep. Hmm.
yeah you know I love Darwin quotes, they're awesome.
Yeah.
And what a great animal to talk about on a day
Yeah.
like that. But I guess being a herpetological podcast, we should maybe touch on reptiles a little bit if you
We can
want.
segue.
Uh, yeah, if we have to. So, can you talk to me a little bit about what you? I see a lot of stuff about what you work with at your institutions and whatnot. And maybe I just haven't looked enough. I don't hear as much as what you personally are keeping. Can you tell me a little bit about what
Sure.
personally, like as just like a herp keeper, like what are you keeping and really like?
So I am. I try my damnedest to not do the Noah's Ark thing. I think I try to be focused, but I can't.
Yeah, it's tough. It's not
so
easy.
so that's a problem. And the other thing is, now that I'm older, my son's about to graduate high school, and my wife and I were very frugal, so we didn't ever live outside our means. And she's a high school teacher, I'm a college professor. We live in West Virginia. We're not like swimming with cash. But I have reached a point in my life where like some of those holy grails when I was 20 are now attainable. Um and so I fight that all the time. But I have being a taxonomist, I have to classify it. So I basically have around 5 specializations here at the house. The one that obviously is up your alley is I definitely have to have nature scenes. There's no way. I love Nerodia. I love garter
Yep,
snakes. If I could keep Regina, I would, but
that'd
they're
be
just
cool. Shouldn't those be
I
like
can't.
your arch nemesis?
Yeah, I actually study them. We can talk about that later.
Well,
But
they're
no,
nature scenes.
that's
I'd
the
be happy to
perfect
talk about them.
critter. Queen snakes, my worlds come together.
That's awesome.
So I got nature scenes. I obviously have a little thing for dipsatid snakes. So I've got the false water cobras are here. I have the boruna, which are the false musaranas or musaranas. The musarana that people keep in herpetoculture. I also have Paraphimophis, which is the brown musarana. I had a pair, but my female, she laid some red bloody slugs, and I think she ruptured
Ooh.
an oviduct and actually passed away, which
Okay,
is
that's a shame.
very upsetting because they are extremely hard to find. But anyway, and then in the dipsatid group are hognose snakes, which is my current major academic pursuit because I'm writing the book, The Complete Hognose Snake, with John Rice right now. So dipsatids. Then I have my lampropeltines. That's what I call them anyway, which are milk snakes, king snakes, gopher snakes, things like that. I have a lot of, I don't know why, but I love Florida king snakes. And so I have a bunch of locality Floridana. I pretty much have all the localities that are kept in herpetoculture except for 2. Uh, one of them I'm just not getting because I just don't like them. I don't like their look. And then the other one I can't find. So that's the reason why I don't have those. I just recently, with the lampropeltines, got into Pitchophis, gopher snakes,
Nice.
pine snakes, bull snakes. They are one of my first loves, but my house is horrible with them. We don't have, apparently, I don't have the right amount of airflow to keep pits alive. So I did an experiment last spring, and I bought a trio of adult Kankakee bull snakes, and I bought a couple gopher snakes, and then I just basically where I keep them is in my garage, and got so many fans to move air around, and it worked. And so now,
Well,
like throttle down So I replaced a bunch of king snakes with pitch ophis. So anyway, but I got the lamprey peltines, and then the boids. I have Argentine boas. I have boa sigma. I have yellow anacondas. I have Dumerals boas on the way, and then I actually have Styx ball pythons. I love ball pythons. That's I have normals, I have a pied, and I have pastels, and I don't know
Cool.
anything beyond that.
Yep.
It's very nostalgic for me. My son likes ball pythons, so we've got those, but they're clumped in the boids. And then the final group I have is lizards, because I'm a squamate guy, and so I always wanted to keep Gilas, and I had an opportunity like dropped in my lap to get a pair of Gilas, and I can keep them here. So I was like, screw it, I'm going to buy the Gilas. And Gila monsters are the ultimate snake for people who keep, sorry, the ultimate lizard for people who keep snakes, because you get in this like feed it once a week, and you can't really do that with other lizards. Gilas you can, and so and they worked out so well that I was like, well, I got to get the other one. And so now I have a pair of Heloderma exasperatum. I don't know what the common name for that beaded is. It's the common beaded that you can get down here in the States, and I love those things to death.
They're
And
cool.
my son,
We not to cut you off there. Sorry.
yeah,
When my mentor Steve Featherstone, I lived on his property for a little while, out of a tent with a mullet, and just worked with animals. It was fucking awesome.
nice.
But his, my favorite was always the crocodilians. I'm a crocodilian lover. And my second was always his. He had this old
Yeah,
man beaded. This thing was, I don't know how old this thing was, but it was old. And that one was always pretty. And like the first time seeing a beaded lizard, and as a grown up thinking about Gila monsters, you're like, oh my god, that thing is huge. Like they're
yes,
not small lizards. But anyway,
yep,
go ahead. Sorry to cut you
yeah.
off.
No, my beadeds are young, but I got them dialed in now, and so they're growing at a nice steady pace. And then Colin has a bunch of random weirdo geckos. We have cave geckos. We have Madagascar ground geckos. I've got tokay geckos in this cage right
Those are
here.
my favorite. Yeah, I got tokay on my arm there. That's
Ah,
my
beautiful,
favorite
dude.
gecko. My
Yep,
favorite
I love
geckos.
them too because they're hostile.
Yep,
Um,
they're awesome.
and there's a couple cresteds lurking around here. There's some Russian tortoises. The Russian tortoises were basically rescues. People didn't want them, and I was like, all right, fine, I'll take them.
Yeah, whatever.
And so, yeah, and I sit it somewhere in the neighborhood. I don't know. I don't count. I'm between 80 and 100 animals at the house.
Okay.
I know that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but that's the collection right now. And I don't even think I said out loud false water cobras. Obviously, I have false water cobras.
You briefly mentioned them a
Okay,
little bit.
good.
I know you're
Yeah.
well known for false waters too. Like you're the
Yes.
false water guy.
Hmm.
I like false waters because they remind me of garter snakes, just bigger.
Yeah.
Like
Well, that's exactly why I got them. I like
yeah,
snakes that like water. That's why I have yellow anacondas. Is because
yeah. I got a yellow anaconda.
yeah,
Have you worked with greens?
I have a green at school.
Okay.
Hmm.
I've always found people are always like, and it's opinion. Like people are always like, greens are nippier, yellows are nippier. I've always found yellows way nippier. Like
Yeah,
always,
I'm on that team.
like mine's really good, but in
No,
general,
and the thing about me and yellow anacondas, and we talked about this on CCR, I feel like yellow anacondas are the relationship that I need to let go away in my life.
yeah,
I've had probably 10 of them now over the years. And I love them to death. And then I'll inevitably get to a point where I'm like, I don't know if I can keep this thing anymore. And I find them all good homes. And then they go about a year without them. And I'm like, I need those again. And then I
is it
get
an
them again.
attitude thing? Is it
What was that?
Is it because of
No,
the
it's not
attitude?
even an attitude. I don't mind the biting. I mean, full disclosure, I'm wearing gloves. I don't want to take a bite. They do that thing, which I know you know what I'm
Oh,
talking
the
about. They
side
have one
bite?
of the worst snake bites of any snake, in my opinion, because mine have always done this thing where they bite and then they kind of tweak their head a little bit and then they pull. It's
Yeah,
never just this quick, bite. So they like leave gashes and crap. I don't like that.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I have a trio currently that are little. But the other reason why I would move mine on is I had a hard time. I can get animals to grow. Yellow anacondas are like a nemesis to me because mine don't grow, and I never understand why I can't get them to grow. I've feed them routinely. They eat. They're fine, but they inevitably end up getting a little stunted. The last, what I thought was a pair, but it ended up being two males that I had. I bought them as adults, and that was I'm learning that's what I should have done this time. Because,
Gotcha.
I thought, I can get anything to grow now, because that was an issue I had when I was an early keeper. Was I didn't understand how important it was to keep things warm for metabolism, and so I got them dialed in now, and they're just not growing, which pisses me off. But
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Mine's
I
the
still
opposite.
love them to death.
Fucking stop growing. I cannot
Yeah.
feed that thing for a month, and it's like I'm gonna put it on a foot anyway. It's like,
Yeah, I don't understand why I can't get these damn things. Like I said, they're the nemesis. They should work out, and they just don't. So
that's a. It's so man. I don't know. Like I love anacondas. I have a love hate relationship with anacondas. I say like my yellow anaconda is my big snake for outreach programs, which sometimes people are like, whoa, like you use a yellow. She's really good. Like she really is one of the
yeah,
best ones I've worked with, or I wouldn't be using her. When I was again working with at Steve's facility there, and we had I don't know 3 big like 9-10 foot yellows and a couple greens of various sizes, and I hated using them. They were always the worst. Like I think it was 2 yellows, 1 hybrid, and 2 greens, 1 hybrid, 3 yellows, all different in like enclosures. Because Steve gets in a lot of rescues. um, and the first time I ever got bit, I think I was around 13, and I was using I don't know an 8 foot green for a program for camp. And this, I don't know if you've ever known. I've always found anacondas they're fine and then they're not, and it's
yeah,
something
that's
triggers them, and then they do
100%.
that stupid little side bite where
Yep.
it doesn't even seem like it's defense. It's just like they'll do it and then they'll let go, and you're like, what
Mhm.
the fuck was that for? It makes
Yeah.
no sense. So I had one. What she did is she went up the back of my sleeve inside the shirt
Oh,
and then did that on the shoulder very gently. Nobody noticed it, let go. And my partner at the time was like asked me after the fact. She was like why, like your whole demeanor changed at some point, like what happened? And she didn't realize. And that night I was like, she's pulled 2 teeth out of my shoulder. I was like,
yeah.
that's why, because these things suck.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
anacondas and I was really hesitant to get my yellow, but thankfully it worked out where she's only bitten me once. That was a
Yeah.
while ago, so you kind
Oh
of do
no, the
learn.
babies I have, I think in the first 20 minutes I was holding the male, he bit me 8 times.
Nice,
So
fantastic. Yep,
yes.
perfect. That's like my
Mhm.
diamondback waters. They're kind of like that. I've got
Yeah.
5 diamondback waters now, and they're all like my big females are actually pretty good now. Like once they're out,
Hmm.
they're very good. They don't musk, they don't bite. But my 3 little ones naturally are little water snakes.
Yeah. Hmm.
Things. But I have Fasciata pictiventris, and
Yep.
those are like ball pythons. Like they rock. They're really good. I recently, I mean, if we're gonna talk a little bit about nature scenes, I got grass snakes in recently. Finally,
Oh,
again.
cool.
Oh my god, I got Natrix mora, the viperine
Hmm.
water snake, and I got the 2 stripe morph, and they look like little yellow anacondas. Like as they age, that yellow comes in. They look like mini
Yeah.
yellow anacondas that don't get any bigger than that. And they've been a blast. And aside from that, so I have 3 reptile rooms if you include the quarantine room, but not including that one. I've got the 2. There's this one that I'm in now. I'm in my natricine room because of course that's the
Cool.
one I'm going to make my office, right?
Yeah.
And the one right to my right is where I keep everything else, and that I call that the outreach room because it's mostly stuff that I'm using for educational stuff. There's a couple like the tokays are out there too. I don't let anything that's not a natricine come in here. Um, but I got the anacondas out there, the hog island, the doomerals, the we had a big, huge tegu that unfortunately recently passed away. He had a very unknown and troubled history, but and I lost him recently. Unfortunately, he was big too, like bulldog head on him. We got the caiman out there. We have caiman,
Nice.
Cuvier's dwarf caiman, and she's been really cool. And then other odds and ends, but I definitely prefer to hang out in here in the Natracine room, and I wish I could get away with just going to schools with like 10
Yours.
garters
Yeah.
and waters and being like,
Mhm.
this is why. But one of the cool garter projects that I'm working on right now, before we get back to I guess the guest, whatever, is
Mhm.
we got so you've seen the Quebec Flames, obviously.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
There's flames in Ontario as well, and nobody knew this until very recently, because of me. Um, and I recently moved up to the range, and it was on purpose. And I was able to legally collect some, and I have captive born flames now from Ontario.
Oh, nice.
These things are killer, dude. They are super, super nice. And so hopefully now in the next three or so years, I'll have the F1s of the Ontario Flames. I called them Cochrane District Flames to kind of keep a more of a locality thing with them.
Mhm.
Ontario's just so big, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I'm kind of working with right now. And
Were they hard to find?
they're incredibly. Do you mean okay? So no, they weren't, because I just realized what you meant. The
Yeah.
flames. If I were to say garters in general, it's the only snake I have this far north. Maybe smooth greens, maybe,
Mhm.
but I haven't found any yet. Um, so I've never been good at herping, but up here I'm even worse. So I do a lot of road cruising. That seems to just be the easiest way for me. I've done boards everywhere I can find, and I
Yeah.
have no luck. Um, so out of, let's say I catch 100 garters in a year, 4 will not be flames.
Will not be flames.
Not be flames. Yeah, it's very
Holy
high.
hell.
It's almost 100% flames. And when I say flames, I'm not talking there's some red speckling. I'm talking these things have, so Quebec flames usually don't have, or well, not usually don't have, but a lot of them don't have orange bellies and cheeks. These things are like orange. The entire body is
Whoa.
orange. My phone background is a one I road cruise. I didn't keep this girl because it would have been illegal. But I don't know if you can see here. Maybe if it'll focus a little bit. Probably not, eh?
Yeah.
Anyway, let's try once
Holy
more.
hell.
So her face, I'll just send it to you on Facebook later. Her whole face is orange, and I've gotten some that I got 2 litters here, unrelated litters right now that I'm growing up, and one is like green with the orange, and she has, which I've never seen in a flame, a big orange dot right in the middle of her already orange head.
Mhm.
It's just a different shade of orange. They're cool looking things, man. I'm really
That's
excited
cool.
to see them go. Um, but what's the main one I wouldn't mind getting more specific about is what nature scenes do you keep?
Sure. Right now, I keep 2 species. As of yesterday, I had 3, but my Gulf salt marsh snakes,
Mm.
I don't. I had an enormous female of those, so I keep both of the subs the both of the subspecies that are kept commonly in herpetoculture for the salt marsh snakes. And I always this like I can remember the names of hundreds of snakes, thousands of snakes. I can never get the damn subspecies right on the salt marshes. So forgive me, but I think it's compressicata, which I believe is the one that is down around the Everglades. Could be wrong on that. And then I think it's Clarkeye were the 2 that I kept. But my Gulfs, which were the brown ones with the tan lines, they passed away yesterday. My giant female I had for 4 years died in my hands, which was horrible.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, and then I did a necropsy because I felt a lump, and I know why she died. She had a gigantic tumor in her intestine. So
I had that
uh,
happen to an older Marcianus that I had.
yeah.
She
Hmm.
was like she was the first garter snake I ever bought and didn't sneak into my house against my parents' will.
Hmm.
And she was my first litter. She was my first everything. She's the logo to Creature Crossing.
Oh, there
That
you
that
go.
line
Cool.
is her face. So she passed away about 6 months ago, and I thought she was gravid.
Hmm.
And I was like, this is weird. Like, and so, I started to notice some issues. She couldn't keep food down then. And then I did the same thing, necropsy, and she had this huge mass. Like,
Yeah.
and this wasn't like I know that the stomach gets all weird with like crypto. That was what I was scared of. And when I saw this thing, I was like, no, this is something else. I don't know,
No, this was,
intestinal
yeah, same thing with
cancer,
me.
stomach cancer. I don't know what it was,
Yep.
but it was a fatty, big, fat mass of disgustingness, and it was heartbreaking.
Yeah. No. So, yeah, I have the Gulf salt marshes, and then I have the bright red ones that are in the Everglades, which I was actually able to at IHS last year. It was in Fort Myers, Florida, which isn't that far away from their range. And so Chris Montross, who's one of the Nerodia gods,
Yeah,
uh,
he's awesome.
and he was like, he came to IHS and was like, we got to go find these in the field together. Like, this has to happen. So we did. It was pretty awesome. It was extremely cool to be standing in a mangrove forest. I just seen a freaking stingray and I caught a water snake. Like, that was pretty wicked.
Yeah, that's
So
badass.
yeah, but those are the two Nerodia that I'm keeping currently. And then garter wise, I have Oregon red spots that I've had for a very long time. And then I have a litter of Pictoventris um, that I'm raising currently. The golf, I did an oopsie, and I thought that the Gulf salt marsh snake and the one Florida water snake I still have were both males. And I came in one day and was like, they're not doing what males do to each other. So, and so I ended up getting like this unintentional hybrid litter. But the thing that's interesting about that is actually in nature up in the panhandle of Florida, they do well, that would be fasciata up there, but Pictoventris and that and this particular subspecies of Gulf salt marsh snake do hybridize because that's what makes their taxonomy so crazy. So I thought, okay, this could actually be kind of interesting. So I'm raising that litter currently.
Cool.
They'll stay here. They're never going to go anywhere else.
Integrades
And
are
then the
cool.
other
There's a
two,
lot of people who do
yeah,
the Atritus integrades as well. Between like Tim
yeah,
Spuckler breeds some Atritus integrades, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah. So, but just the Oregon red spots and these guys. But I will never not have Nerodia. I could probably live without garters. Though I love my Oregon red spots to death. They're the only snakes that are in my living room. They were in a 40-gallon breeder because they were out moving all the time. And I just opened up the conservation center, and the regulations for West Virginia are kind of they're interesting. We're not allowed to keep native species at the trinomial level, so subspecies matter. And I do herpetological work now for the state. So I was talking to the herpetologist. I was like, so if I keep these Oregon red spotted garter snakes on display, and we just call them garter snakes, like, what's the permitting deal? He said, he actually told me, like, Zach, just do that. I was like, okay. So now my Oregon red spots are up at the center because they got a much bigger enclosure.
Cool.
But no, those are the two. And I keep in naturalistic vivaria. They're in glass enclosures. I've tried keeping them other ways. I just really like them in exos or Zoomed's version of an exo because I think they need the airflow.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But I do keep the salt marshes. Actually, I Montross does not agree with it.
I was gonna
Uh,
say, I bet he loves that.
No, they're right next to me. Like, literally, this is their enclosure.
Okay.
The entire bottom of their enclosure is water.
Mhm.
So, and then I took light diffuser and basically cut a footprint out, and then I have bricks in there, and so I put that footprint down, and I put down a bunch of plastic plants, cork bark flats and tubes, and so I built it up, as you can see right here, with sticks and things, and they're in and out of that all the time. They bask. They're moving. With that center, I have a brand new office, and I wanted it to be like professional. So I'm moving these guys into a 70-gallon aquarium in April. I just need the time to deck it out, but that will actually have a filtration. But I just use dump and fill, and I also feed them live fish. A lot of people get really cranky if you're feeding goldfish. I have to feed goldfish in the winter, but I feed a lot of fish from around here. I've done fecals out the wazoo on some captive born Floridana, or sorry, not Floridana. That's king snake. Pictoventris that were captive born. I bought them off a guy really cheap. I fed them our native fish from the local stream just to see what would happen parasite wise. I know they got something from them, but they were thriving. And I just really think that they need to be fed what they eat in nature. I have issues with the mouse diet myself,
Oh yeah,
so
yeah.
I just avoid it. um, but then you've got the thimonase issue if you just feed them goldfish. So I make sure I'm throwing suckers at them, bluegill, a real diversity. And what was really interesting is they were growing when I was feeding them rodents, but they were growing. Yeah, it's rare for a growing colubroid to get fat, and I noticed that they were like legitimately chonky, and I
Yeah.
didn't like that. They were growing, but they weren't growing the right way. So I just basically stripped down and started feeding them fish. And as soon as I started feeding these things fish, I got steady growth. I got morphometrics that make sense. The fatness went away, basically, uh, and they're the best. Yeah,
Yeah, they rock. It's funny, like I've been doing Natracine so long now, and like I run one of the bigger, like I run the biggest Natracine group,
yeah,
not Thamnophis, like the one that's all
yeah,
Natracines. And that's not a brag. That's just to say, like,
yeah.
I see people post shit
You've
all
seen
the
it all.
time. I've seen the rodents and I've seen what it does to them. I've experimented a lot. I'm still experimenting. I'm experimenting right now. Like I've got different
Yeah.
things going on. I'm testing. I've done rodents only. I no longer do rodents only. That answers your
Yeah.
question, right? Like any question, right? I do still include rodents.
Sure.
Not very often. Like my Diamondbacks, I gave them a rat pinky like 2 weeks ago. I think that was their first rodent in a year or something like
Hmm.
that. Um, Babies, I tend to go a little more, but when I say a little more, I'll like if I'm cutting up food for, in this case, I had I think 80 babies this year. um, just from 2 litters. I'm just getting started again. Like I was out of the hobby
Yeah.
for a little bit. Not that numbers matter, but
Yeah.
I'll do about a ton of silver sides. I get a lot of half my money is spent on those frozen silver sides. And I do some chicken hearts, and then I'll do some pinkies, and that's my go-to mix. Oh, and frog legs. I feed a lot of frog legs too.
Yeah.
But I do a lot of the silver sides just because it's whole prey. Now, like I bet you if you I think what like you said, like being able to handle the parasites, I think is a lot to do with um immune system, right?
Yeah.
Like if an animal has a high stress or situation or something, they can crash sometimes and whatever. But I've been experimenting too because you mentioned um, you keep yours with water. My friend Jesse he got some Natrix Mora as well. He keeps his exactly like how you just said, almost entirely water. I don't even think he filters it. He just does switches. And I'm too scared to do that personally. I'm too scared. Same reason I don't feed live fish. I know people do it. I know people have
Yep.
success. All power to you. I'm too scared. So,
Yeah.
so I've been working on these enclosures recently, and I'm just about to finish the first one where it's wood and the front it's just like a sliding front glass. And the ones I'm starting with right now are 36 by 18 by 18, and I have the lip at the bottom is 4 inches for the glass to
Hmm.
slide, and then in depending on the species, anywhere from like 1/3, a quarter to like half. I have a little aquarium that I built that's 4 by the dimensions of the enclosure
Oh,
for
that's
either
cool.
half, and then that's what I'm gonna try. So, and
Hmm.
then it just slides right in, and there's your water feature. I don't have to do anything inside it. And I'll put like I'm gonna do like how aquariums do with the sponge filters, and then I
Yep.
can hook up 20 or 10 nitrocene enclosures to a single pump, and then I've got all the filtered and whatnot, right? And then I'm even been exploring with those if I'm gonna add like computer fans or something to increase that
Well,
airflow, because I have a theory too, where it's not only dirty water that causes, everybody's heard of who keeps waters has heard of blisters, blister disease and whatnot. I think it's airflow too. Like, because if you
It's
got
totally airflow.
no airflow, I mean, they can't dry off. It
I
gets,
think that the
whatever.
airflows, you just nailed it. I think
Yeah.
that when you don't get the airflow in there, you're just creating a stagnant, humid, beautiful bacteria growing wonderland.
Yeah.
And with this enclosure, the thing that works out, as you can see right here, I let all of mine bask, and
Yep.
they
Same
all
here.
love. I mean, if you have been out in the wild with Nerodia, that's how you find them. They're
Yeah, you find
basking
them
up
in
in a
like
tree.
I've always found northern water snakes in trees, like
Yeah,
basking. Like,
exactly. So this right here is just basically, um, it's cork flats on top of cork flats at this angle to create these voids. And then I just take these plastic plants and just shove them in there. It looks like hell, but right now there's literally two of the males. I'm looking at them right now. They wedge themselves in there just like I've seen them outside.
yeah,
And that's how they sleep. And then the other two sleep in the cork tube.
yeah,
It's like clockwork, but
yeah,
I
they're
think
awesome.
that's yeah, the having the airflow, and that's another thing Montross talks a lot about. That's clutch. If you don't
Yeah,
have the airflow,
absolutely.
you're screwed. If you do have the airflow, they'll live a long ass time.
Yeah,
But I'm I'm gonna focus on these because so I bought six of the red mangroves, and they were all little. And I bought these guys 3-4 years ago. I trusted what people told me they were, and I should have, because I didn't sex them, and they took so long to get this big, which is so funny to me because that's like an adult. And I realized like they all have stopped growing. What the hell is going on? And so I pull one out and like, well, you're a male. Okay, whatever. I need you. Pulled out another one. You're a male. Pulled out the third one. Was like, oh shit, you're a male. Pulled out the fourth one. I was like, mother, you're a male. So I only
yeah,
had males. I was like, I'm not going to be producing red mangrove water snakes anytime soon. So at Colubrid Fest this year, I called Montross and was like, how much would it be to get a hold back? Because I don't want to start with a little scrawny lady that's going to take me 4 freaking years. Because that's the thing that's kind of interesting about the salt marsh snakes is that uh, they, even though they're the smallest, one of the smaller Nerodia, they take forever to grow. Like I've raised Florida water snakes, rhombifer, diamondbacks. I've raised there was another one in there, bandids. And they go from a little baby worm to an adult snake in like the standard 2.5-3 years. These little bastards have been like they're the literal definition of slow grow. And I like things. I don't like to push things, but I want to see growth when you're a juvenile.
yep.
Uh, but now it's personal. So I was able to retch from him one of his holdback females. So now there are 4 males and 1 lady that I have. The lady's in a different tank. So,
Nice. Very cool.
but
That's a
yeah,
species I'd like to get. Chris, I yeah, I mean, I hate him because it's all the snakes I really
yeah,
want. Like, I mean, he's
uh-huh.
got those Caspers, and I'm like, oh my god,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a whore for gray snakes, like that
Yeah.
silvery gray. Oh my god,
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
I almost
Um,
bought those Caspers 4 times this fall.
they're
I know
so
exactly
nice,
what you're
man,
talking
so
about.
nice.
Mm-hmm.
Like my favorite corn snakes are the Miamis.
Yeah.
I love that look to them, that extra gray they have. It's
Mm-hmm.
just so cool. And he posted something else. Oh, have you seen there's like this 100 people will post and claim it's their videos. Have you seen the oh, what is it? It's a king rat snake, but I can't remember what one it is now. It's like a gray king rat snake.
I know what you're talking
And
about. It's the one
uh
that's possibly undescribed.
yeah, it's
And then there's
young
another one that
something.
looks like a king cobra, like
Yeah. So
young
anyway,
good
this
or something.
I saw that thing, and this thing is so cool. It's got the garter, not the garter snake, but it's got the thing I like about garter snakes, which is those brow ridges. Makes them
Yep.
look angry all
Mm-hmm.
the time, like you get in a big
Yeah.
female. And then they're just that. one color of gray, and I was like, oh my god,
Yeah.
I think it's so cool. Gray snakes are awesome. That's another thing I get made fun of for. I want my snakes to be gray and brown. Like,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
whatever, it is what it is. So I mean, do you want to tell us a little bit about your false water cobras? And I mean,
Sure.
I'm pretty sure you've spoken about false water cobras on much every podcast that you've been on.
Mhm.
But like, what's up with the false water cobras? I don't know. I know a little bit about them. They were like on the top of my list for a while, and then they kind of got bumped down when I got more in. I used to just be garters, and then I got pushed right into the natricines, and then they kind of got bumped down a little bit. Same with like things like Crebos and stuff. And
Mhm.
the one thing, I think the last thing I remember learning about false water cobras or hearing about, which I'm pretty sure was from you in one of your episodes, was that the um the lavenders are kind of dumb. Like
Yeah.
they're
I'm a lavender hater. I
yeah,
will fully admit that. I wear that badge of honor. Um, my lavender is right up there. The only snake before we get into the falsies, because
yeah,
they are directly, my interest in them is directly correlative to my interest in the rodeo. Uh,
I approve.
but the only snake that I have ever had die from eating its own damn skin was my original male lavender false water cobra. I they will, falsies have a reputation for a very enthusiastic feeding response that they definitely are worthy of that reputation. But while they are kind of like, they give the appearance when they're eating of just being these deranged, stupid snakes, they are also the only snakes that I have had where like they get a big chunk of mulch or a couple chunks of cocoa chunk, and when they're like eating, they'll stop and like work their jaw and kick that out and then keep eating. Like that's a normal false water cobra thing to do. Um, and so I fed this male lavender, didn't think anything of it, and then he slowly crashed over a period of 2 weeks, and I was like, "What is going on?" And I picked him up, and there's this big lump in his stomach, and I thought, what, what did you do?" And then, sure enough, I have no idea why, but he shed and he ate the whole shed. So he was a 4.5 foot snake that ate his shed for a 4.5 foot snake. Well, you need in order to digest that, you need keratinase. They don't have keratinase, so he basically just had this giant wad of keratin in his gut that he couldn't pass, and it caused the blockage, and he couldn't, like, there was no way to save him, so he ended up dying. I did the necropsy. I took a bunch of pictures. I was going to put it all over Facebook to be like, this is why I don't feel like we should keep inbreeding these things, but I didn't, because I didn't want to, get all the hate. um but I've recently, so I got another one because I thought, okay, I just had a dumb one. you know the next male that I got, just as stupid, like literally does the same dumb crap. He the rat water dripped down onto the substrate off the tongs, and he chemo sensed it and started like literally eating the bedding like M&Ms. Like, I've never seen
Oh my
anything
god.
like it in my life, and I was already like traumatized from losing the first one, so I grabbed him and actually like got a speculum, opened up his mouth, and I'm like pulling this crap out. So after that, though, I'm gonna breed him one more time. I have a het lavender in the garage, um, and he's actually on a breeding loan to me. And I've already messaged the dude and was like, "Hey, I'm gonna give you the snake back.
Yeah.
I'm
Just
just
do
gonna
it for
make
my house.
normal, well, what I call high black and high yellow, because I like the that look." But
Yeah.
anyway, so now getting back to why I like false water cobras. I when So we have this major at West Liberty, called Zoo Science, and it's to make zoo professionals. And it was not supposed to be my major, but it became my major to kind of oversee, and I've been with it since its onset, and now a decade ago in 2016. But I was tasked with like every animal keeper's dream, which was spend other people's money on an animal collection. I was like, okay, I can do that. And I knew I that we were going to be doing research, and I knew that I liked oddball snakes. I also knew that garters probably and waters were not the best animals for our collection because they were going to be interacted with a bunch of people. Um, but I also wanted some oddballs so we could actually like establish ourselves as the people that figured these things out or published on them. And those were going to be my snakes because if I'm going to be in charge of this program, I got to have my pet project. And so I was on Fauna. This is when Fauna, like Morph Market, wasn't what it is now. Kingsnake.com was still in the game with the classifieds, and I saw a false water cobra. And at the time, I was like, okay, well, no, they're aggressive. They have venom that's equal to a timber rattlesnake. I knew all of the things. And then this is a wonderful example of where Facebook actually did some good, because the false water cobra, there's two groups. There's the false water cobra, and then there's false water cobras. Those are the two groups. Found them. I went on there, started reading what people were saying, and what they were saying was the polar opposite. So I bought one in a tattoo shop. Only time I've been in a tattoo shop in my life. And brought it home, put it in a tub in this room. That was about like 3 p.m. I had an extra mouse. And so I was like, I'm just going to see what'll happen. It's not going to eat. And I opened the bin and freaked out because the snake wasn't in the bin. And so I don't know if you've ever done that thing where you're like holding a mouse with forceps with these hands, but you're using your fingers to kind of move around. So I was moving stuff around with the mouse was wiggling around. And then all of a sudden, this like tiny little beast shot like a rocket up out of the substrate, grabbed the mouse, started thrashing, convulsing, was so over the top, hit the ground, and then like inhaled the mouse. Like the mouse was there, and then it was gone. Just like Nerodi eat, just like Thamnophis eat. And I was like, holy hell. And it's one of those watershed moments where I was like, there's never going to be a day I don't own these things.
Yeah, I can see that.
And so their care, they got a lot of Natricine-esque characteristics. They do the gobble thing when they eat. That's what I call it. They don't like mess around with feeding. They just eat. They're very inquisitive, just like Natricines. If you give them stuff in their enclosure, they use it. Like a lot of snakes, you give them all this stuff and you're like, whoa, look at this enclosure. And then they spend their entire life in the hide box. We have a built-in enclosure at school. I think this was yesterday. It's 8 foot tall. There's branches at about 7 feet. And we keep 4 male false water cobras in this really large enclosure. Yesterday, all 3 of them were 7 feet off the ground basking, which is just cool as can be. So I like snakes that do stuff. I like snakes that are inquisitive. I like snakes that challenge you. The only snakes I've ever had that tail whip, like a lizard, falsies do that and it hurts.
That's awesome.
It's great, So and they live in water. They're an aquatic critter, and I just am strongly drawn to creatures that live in water. So it didn't take that long for me to realize that this is my snake. And then I went from 1 to 2 to 4 to 6. And I think here at the house, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 adults here. And then I work with a colony at school of about 10 adults. And then they're easy to breed. In fact, they're too easy to breed. That's my problem that I have. They naturally double clutch. And cool. So it is not outside the realm of possibility to get 60 or 70 babies from a single adult female. One of my students who is in herpetoculture too was like, you have single-handedly crashed the false water cobra market. And I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of proud of that. Like, because when we breed them for school, it's great. We can get sample sizes of like 90 animals, which is what you want. But then that's 90 animals we're going to find homes for. And we found homes for all of them. So
people want,
and then the rear fang thing is kind of cool too.
I love the rear fang thing. Like I love that thing about garters. I love it about I mean, from what I can tell, all nature scenes, it seems to be a
Yes.
pretty, like a basal thing for them,
Hmm.
or not basal, but ancestral
Yeah.
thing for them. Now I don't mean to push you off, but I mean I'll have you here. I don't know if you know the answer to this. Somebody asked me yesterday, or not yesterday, a couple days ago. The paleontologist guy. I had like a our last guest. I was trying not to mention nature scenes for one episode.
Yeah.
I've mentioned it every single episode. This was the one I wasn't going to do it. Okay, and I didn't do it. And then he mentioned a species of mosasaur who has scale impressions in a fossil, and he's said, "Think about garter snake scales." And I freaked out on him. I was like, "Fucker!" Like I,
Yeah.
I didn't even do it. And so I was talking, and then I started talking about nature scenes because he made fun of me. He's like, "This guy picked the two stinkiest snakes to work on." And I
Yep.
was like, "Yeah, I did."
Hmm.
Like, but anyway, I was bringing up reasons why I work with them, and I mentioned the rear fang venomous thing, and he was like, "Oh man, like are Nerodia like?" And from what I understand, they are too. And
Yeah.
like, okay, so that's true, right? Like I figured they were.
Yeah.
'Cause my
Well,
females all have fangs, like just like a garter, or
yeah.
they're a
They don't have
large
quite
package.
the specialized dentition, but they absolutely have a Duvernay's gland
I
apparatus.
thought so
Um,
because like my
yeah.
pictoventris female, her little fang in the back is huge, and then my
Yeah.
diamondbacks. I have this funny video that I just put up a couple days ago. My diamondback. It wasn't even feeding day, but this is just an example of why they're so awesome. Is like open mouth at the glass, like trying to bite the glass. No food
Hmm.
in the room anywhere. She doesn't smell food, but she's still like open mouthing the glass. I didn't see a fang in that mouth, but
Yep.
with my
They have
pictoventris are there.
so some you don't have to necessarily have the enlarged dentition to have the Duvernay secretion. And that's what people don't realize. And there's a lot of people, not a lot of people, but there's some biologists now that are just doing exploratory work. They pipette up some saliva from any snake, and then they run it through this thing called an HPLC that's able to take all the chemical constituents based off weight and classify them. And what they're finding is like a lot of things have bioactive compounds that don't necessarily have the modified dentition to deliver it because they just chew as part of their natural prey acquisition behavior. And so
Yeah,
Nerodia does that. If you've ever watched any Nerodia out in the field or in a tank, if feed them live prey, they grab it and it's just like, and in that process, every time their teeth are penetrating the flesh of that animal, they're taking those secretions and injecting them. So,
yeah,
but it's well known. Cypodon, the common water snake, northern water snake, whatever you want to call it, they have a chemical constituent that's damn near identical to heparin, which kills off platelets, and that is there are cytotoxic venoms out the wazoo that do that.
yeah. That's very cool.
So
I always figured, and then I just kind of never confirmed it. I always just was like, well, they probably are. It's ancestral. Why wouldn't they be, right? And but it's good to get some confirmation because it's another
yeah.
cool thing about water snakes, right? Like and then going back to the false waters, like very
Mm-hmm.
very similar.
Yep.
Maybe a little more a little more serious in some cases.
Yeah.
Um, do you have you ever had any run-ins with the? I mean, assume you've been bit by the things. I know that it's
Yeah.
not as
So
easy to get reactions from snakes like that, but
the thing that's fun about false water cobras is that they go through small dog, big dog phases. So small dogs have to prove themselves and can be barky and yippy and you know aggressive, more aggressive than defensive. And then you got like your great big 80-pound dog that's like, hey, how's it going?
yeah,
And could actually hurt you if it wanted to. That's a false water cobra to a T. When they are little, they suck. When they are babies, they bite all it, all the time. It's hood bite, hood bite. And then when they get to be about 3 feet long, that's when they kind of start this. Okay, I'm confident. Maybe I don't need to bite everything. And by the time they get to 5 feet long, I actually have not really found. I've never owned an adult false water cobra that was defensive. They all, as long as you're slow and deliberate and they don't like to be like out on hooks. They hate hooks. So if you kind of keep them close to your body and take your arms and kind of cradle them, they don't even hood. Like they're
Cool.
very chill. So the babies are the ones that I've been bit by.
Yeah.
And I have only had a couple reactions, and nothing really to write home about. It seems like the lines of false water cobras that made it to Europe, because there hasn't really been too much. Now there is, actually, in the past couple of years. But the Europeans had their group. We had our group here in North America. And the European animals may have been a little bit more virulent, because the keepers that have had like the classic, like, oh God, big gnarly bite responses are the ones that are being bit over in Europe. Now, there's a couple idiots in the States that, for a bunch of likes on social media, let a freaking false water cobra chew on them in a feeding response bite for about 6 minutes, and their
Holy
arms blew up. But
shit.
that's exactly what you would expect if you got chewed on for 6 freaking minutes. And they said they did this in the name of science, and that's just total bullshit.
Yeah,
So,
bull.
they just wanted the attention. So I've, other than the little itty bitties, I've not had anything. Now, I am not with that statement saying that this is a snake you don't need to worry about. I do think you need to treat them with respect.
Yeah, respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think, we need to be like, I was at a herp show once, and there was a guy, there's always that person that's got to walk around the reptile show with a snake. And they were walking around with a 5.5 foot falsie. And I was like, okay, I don't know. Because it's chill on you. I don't want it biting someone else. And then, they have like, that's just a disaster waiting to happen. Yeah, but no, I've never really had anything gnarly happen to me with them. But
Yeah, I've seen the photos, and I've seen the photo. There's some gnarly garter snake photos out there of people
yes,
who have been chewed on too, where you're like, oh my
mm-hmm.
God, are you sure that was a garter? And
Yeah,
I mean, like, it almost sounds like, and maybe it is, but it almost sounds ridiculous to say something like that. But for garters, like, but they need respect too, right? Maybe not
oh
for
hell
the
yeah,
same reasons, but like just for the animal in general. Like, these aren't art pieces. They're not. Like,
mm-hmm.
they're animals that are, if treat them like an animal. Nobody's going around, unless you have working dogs, getting bitten by dogs for fun, unless you're an idiot. I'm sure there's a couple out there who are doing it for fun, you know what I mean? But like,
Yep.
it's I kind of look forward to seeing if maybe that whole thing in the hobby changes, because I think I see a lot of stuff where it hurts to watch, because
Yes,
I mean, it doesn't only paint these people as idiots, but it paints a lot of the animals in a bad light too, where you or I might see clearly an animal either in distress, or one that's just not being handled or respected as it should. The public can see a monster, right?
but it also makes other keepers of that species in the public eye look dumb, and I don't like that, because here I am trying to do everything I can to elevate these animals and foster appreciation for them and respect for them, and then some moron just lets it chew on them for 6 minutes because I'm doing science. I want to see
Yeah.
how much my arm blows up. Like, no,
Yeah.
that's not science. That's grandstanding bullshit, and you shouldn't be doing it. Like,
Yeah.
just stop.
That
So
definitely shows the difference. And you're allowed to be obviously interested in the fact that it's a venomous snake. Like, of course, that's
yeah,
cool. Who Nobody's saying it's not. But I mean, I think it goes to show where the prioritizing is when keeping
yeah,
these animals, right? Like, if I was to keep, and I'd like to one day keep false water cobras, my biggest draw to them is how smart they are. Like, I hear how
yeah.
smart
Oh
everybody
hell
says
yeah.
they are, and that's so cool to me. It's why I love the garters. It's why I love the waters. Uh, I've got some dumb ones, but for the most part, they're super smart. And even baby garters, like, one of my favorite things is to have hold back garters, because it only takes a few months for you to be within the room, and then all of a sudden all the heads start coming out. They're like,
Yeah.
okay, what's going on here? Start working in the enclosure cleaning. I got garter snakes climbing on my arms like I'm Snow White or something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's such a cool thing where that once they get to that
Mhm.
point, that's why I've always had interest in like Crebos and Indigos and stuff
Yes.
too. You guys, you were on Reptile Rejects, right?
Yes.
So Michael sent me he was nice enough to send me one of his Kentucky Northerns, his pine snakes.
Oh, nice.
And so like he was just like, yeah, just cover shipping. And so he sent me one of those, and it's a total asshole. Like this thing is a douchebag. I'm sure he'll grow out of it. But one of the first things I noticed, I have him in a vision cage, and
Mhm.
it was one of those enclosures where like I have a lock for it, but like I've always been bad with locking enclosures, so I just leave it. And then I remember watching one day the snake pushing in um, kind of the middle of one of the panes and sliding it open. And then I pushed it back over because obviously, um, and then he did it again. And then
Yeah.
he went to go out the open side. And I was like, hold on here. Okay, maybe we got to start using this lock. I fully believe that snake knew what it was doing. Like,
No, I false waters do that. I have a female here at the house, um, and I I stopped feeding snakes after work. Like I physically will not do it until I've been home in like an hour or two. Because with my job, I'm usually at the end of the day I'm pretty frazzled because I get I've got tasks 1 through 5 I want to get done, and then tasks Q, X, Z, prime, -1 are thrown at me that I did not plan on it. So it's usually a little bit of a fractured mental state. And so I will just leave the glass wide ass open.
oh, I do that
Like,
all the time. I get in trouble.
yeah,
My fiance gives me shit all the time because I'll leave enclosures
yeah,
open.
yeah. So with that being said, my wife went down into the garage where the snakes are, and she was like, and she looks over, and here's one of my big female falsies, just 3 feet of her is just hanging out of the PVC cage she lives in, just looking. And she yells and like, "Hey, you left the damn cage open. Get down here!" And I got down there. I was like, "I wasn't down here today." And so I was really
Oh
confused, and so I
no.
put her back, closed the door, and then I came back up. And Kath needed to go back down to get something out of the freezer, and she like 30 minutes later, she's like, "Hey, you didn't close the cage," and I was like, "I did." And I go back, and there she is, open the exact same amount, 3 feet of the snakes hanging out of the, like, she's not leaving her cage. She's just dangling outside of it. And I was like, okay, what the hell? So then I put her in, and I'm like, think I'm losing my mind. Like, did you make that up? Like, what the hell? And I close the door, and I'm not kidding. I walk up the steps, and I hear like the sound of the glass in the track, and I look over, and she had figured out that if she wedged herself between her hide and the glass and started spinning in a circle, she could push the damn glass open. And I was like, are you kidding me right now? Like, and then I was like, how the hell am I going to keep you in here? Like, what the hell
Yeah.
am I going to do? So she has permanent shims in her cage because, and she knows, man, if I don't shim it, she'll open it with me down there when I unshim it. And of course, when she does, it's like common. I'm going to try to get a video of it this spring and post it because it is problem solving. It's so much more impressive than like a food puzzle to me, which you see
Oh, of
snakes doing the
course.
food,
Yeah.
because this doesn't involve chemoreception. Like, that's you're relying on a behavior that has a modality. Like, you flick your tongue as a snake, you find your prey, you eat it. This is not that. This is like, okay, I have to apply friction here, spin in this specific direction, and I can slide this glass open. And I remember how to do that. That's false water cobra.
Yeah.
That's also why I will always have a false water cobra. Like, when I get out of herpetoculture, the last snake that will leave the collection will be a false water
Hmm.
cobra.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I remember growing up like herpet. I mean, I'm a young guy still, but like herpetoculture from when I was a kid till now has changed so much.
Oh
To
yeah.
like, I remember when people were like, "Oh yeah, by the way, monitor lizards are venomous. By the way,
Yeah.
garters are venomous. By the way, monitors aren't stupid; they're smart. By the way, we shouldn't be keeping savannas on sand." Like I was
Yeah.
growing up when all that was still happening, and like growing up, another thing is, oh yeah, okay, monitor lizards are smart, and then the rest, especially snakes, are the dumb ones. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I grew up believing that snakes were unintelligent, instinctual animals. it's kind of
Hmm.
like it reminds me nowadays how people thought dinosaurs were when they,
Yeah.
they were stupid, lumbering, cold-blooded lizards. No, they were
Hmm.
birds, just
Yeah.
insane, right?
Hmm.
But and the more, it's kind of been hard for me growing up to shake a lot of those biases because you learn something and then you want to stick to it. And I
Yeah.
think that's just how the human brain works, right? But getting out of those has been really fun to the point where I went, okay, so snakes aren't very intelligent except for these ones. And then now it's to the point where it's like, okay, most snakes are fairly intelligent. And then there's these couple dumb ones, um,
Yeah.
like king
The,
snakes.
the thing with that is we anthropomorphize intelligence way too much. Like
Yeah.
I said it tonight while we were recording. Like they're up and they're moving and they're intelligent. But I also keep blood pythons. I forgot to say that. And bloods are your classic
Well, of
ambush
course, you
predator.
forgot to say
Yeah,
blood pythons. You probably haven't seen them.
yeah, yeah. And they, you know, when I get a rat and I'm feeding them, they have all these little micro behaviors where they're huffing and they're puffing and they're flicking their tongue like crazy and their eyes are going. And it just makes me think like they could be smarter than my false waters, which I hold in like the as a zenith of snake intelligence. But since they don't do mammal like behaviors to show their intelligence, I might not even ever know that they are hyper intelligent, very aware snakes. Like one thing about a blood python that is very interesting to me is they do not forget. Um, I I read about this, and I just recently got back into bloods this past fall, and I bought a couple subadult animals, and I was looking at them and was like, I don't know if you are what I bought. Like I bought one as a female, and this thing has like spurs that are half an inch long and very obvious cloacal or sorry hemipenal bulges. And there's that way you can sex pythons now where you kind of run your thumb down the tail, and I felt what I thought was a hemipene in there, but you know I have snake probes, so I was like, I'll just probe it. I did not know how much bloods hate being probed. That snake, before I probed it, was gentle, was like easy to handle. I would have taken it to a birthday party. After that night of probing, she freaking hates me. she,
Wow, eh?
and it's me. My son can be in here, nothing. I'm in here. She's smacking off the glass. She's in one of these enclosures over here. Um, uh, and it's just it's been really fascinating to me to see how it she changed her behavior in response to a negative thing that I provided. I did, and then she's not forgiven. And that whether we want to admit it or not, there's a cognitive ability there, especially if she's able to differentiate me from Colin, and she does. Like
Yeah.
Colin can do whatever the hell he wants in that cage. Nothing's going to happen. I slide the glass open. She's on point. Um, uh, yeah. So, anywho,
Yeah, that's it's definitely going to be interesting to see where where we go with that, like where
yep.
as we learn more, because like it's happening so fast. And not only keepers are, like citizen science for the people who care for
Mhm.
that kind of thing, right? Which maybe the number isn't as big as it should be, but like people are learning things while keeping them. The things you've said are, like, even though you're a scientist, or if you're a keeper, it wouldn't be any different, right? Like
Yeah.
it's things you've learned. I have the shit I've learned of keeping and breeding these animals has been insane over the last 6 months, let alone 10 years. And I mean, like a blood python is exactly one of those animals that I would think, yeah, but they're one of the dumb ones, 10 years
Yeah.
ago. And it's cool, and even it's funny too because like we just got a blood python recently. It's a little thing, and that snake is totally different from any snake in my collection.
Yeah.
Not just in the way it acts. Like, okay, yeah, it has different ways of doing this, doing it has a different personality. It doesn't like certain things, it likes certain things. If I'm gonna go and mist a snake down, it better not be that blood, because that thing is gonna get pissed.
Have you ever interacted with it at night?
Uh no.
They are completely different animals at night.
Yeah.
So my I have a two grad students. They're a couple, um, and they're snake nerds. And Bjorn loves bloods. Like the first snake he had was a blood, and I had a trade where I traded a guy a bunch of California king snakes I didn't want anymore, and I was supposed to get a pair of blood pythons, and I got 4. And I was like, I don't need 4. And so I was just taking care of the 4. They were babies. And so I kept my 2 and I gave 2 to them because Bjorn was like, I love blood pythons. All right, here you go, have them. And they were having problems getting it eating again. And I was like, have you fed it at night? And like, no. And I was like, go in there at midnight. You don't put light on it and see if you get a different feeding response. And holy hell, Bjorn came and was like, yeah, that's a different animal at 11:30. I was like, yep. And that's that whole nocturnal thing that they do out in Indonesia.
That's how
I
I
was
had to
having
get
trouble getting mine
my
eating, and then I did that trick, which somebody told me to do, and they've been super easy since then.
yeah, I've been lucky. Mine's been incredibly easy. My Dumeral's boa gave me a hard time because I got her at the same time. I had to do the night thing, and she ate
Mm-hmm.
fine. Now she's eating whenever; she doesn't care. But
Yeah,
she was tough to get started when she first came over here. Dumerals are
yeah,
cool too. They're one I didn't
yep.
appreciate as much before till now. I was always a Hog Island guy, and that's it. Like, and I guess
Yeah, I like Hog
anacondas.
Islands.
Hog Islands
Uh,
are cool.
yeah,
Mine's I've had mine 10 years and she's like 3.5 feet. Like she's like
nice.
the tiniest little thing. And I've checked, it's not a male. Her head's like this big. Like
Mm-hmm.
she's a real tiny little animal. It's cool. Um and like we'll like almost only eat birds too. Like so she's
That's
cool.
pretty
I like her
wicked.
a lot. Um let's see. Aside from that, is there I assume you wanting to go to bed kind of soon, so I'll start to
Oh,
wrap
I'm
up
good.
here a little bit. But yeah, is there anything on the horizon for you that you're working on really or like or
From a herpetoculture perspective, I'm just trying to get this eclectic stuff I'm doing a little more focused. So I'm working on that book, the complete hog nose, and one of the goals I had was keeping all of them, the 4 recognized species right now, and I have them all. Um, and over the next year, I just want to I'm going to try to breed the southern hogs this year. I've raised them from hatchlings, and that's been a lot of fun. Uh, I have been keeping westerns or plains hognose, which I don't feel like uh, I I feel like there's opportunities with that snake that are just being completely missed
oh yeah.
because they're kind of becoming the colubrid form of a ball
Of a
python.
ball, yep. I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I see that. I understand it. People got their top hats and their monocles they put on them and stickers and all that garbage. But I'm studying them in the wild now with my students, and I'm taking what I'm seeing in the wild and bringing it into human care and like giving them deep substrates where they can burrow and like grass clumps in their enclosure, and they are just as interesting to me, if not they're equal to the Nerodia when you set them up in a biotope or naturalistic viv and let them do hognose things. uh I think they're fantastic, and I don't know how to get people to appreciate that, but that's one of the goals with the book. So this year, because this is my big year writing, now that all the research has been done, I'm going to be doing a bunch of like setting vivariums up from the ground up to get pictures for the book. And then I'm going to throw those animals in there, and I'm trying to figure out a way to do ethograms just to show like if you give them XYZ, you get behaviors 1, 2, 3. If you give them, ABC, you get behaviors 4, 5, 6. And that kind of thing. That's what I like doing as a keeper, because I also do a lot of herping. I have the new herpetology lab. I'm tracking hognose snakes with radio transmitters, which really makes you understand that a wild hognose snake is so freaking different than these animals we have in human care. It's no like literally, it's like looking at a cockapoo compared to a timber wolf, because these wild animals that are out in the woods, or sorry, out in the prairie in Iowa that we study, I mean, they're like amazingly intelligent animals that have a mastery of their landscape. and then the damn captive plains hognose I have like try to eat themselves.
Yeah, they are like will bite
It's
like a
like,
piece of bread or a blueberry or
yeah,
something. Yeah,
yeah.
I've seen all those pictures.
So it's been, so that's a biggie for me this year, just because of the book. Because I got to get it written. My parts of it written. John Rice is the other guy that's working with me on that. He's doing all the morphs because I'm not really a morph person.
Yeah,
And then he has a large facility, so he's covering like how to keep a large collection, and then I'm doing how to keep a small collection
that's cool.
naturalistically.
That's cool. You
So
don't see that a lot, if at all, in
mhm.
herpetoculture books. So
Yeah,
that's a very cool idea. I never even considered doing
hmm,
that. And that kind of maybe I'll steal that. I've been writing a garter snake book for like the last six
I
years,
know.
and it took a break because I moved and stuff. But I might have to steal that idea.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Well, that's the other thing that I'm doing in herpetoculture is I kind of stumbled back into herpetoculture, and then I started the podcast, which then meant that I got to meet Matt. Most was my first co-host, and then Clint Bartley. And Clint Bartley and I are basically like brothers at this point. I don't even know how to
Mhm.
explain our
Yeah,
relationship, but
Clint
Clint,
seems awesome. I'd love to have him on
yeah,
too. He
oh,
seems
he'll
very
come on,
enthusiastic. Yeah.
yeah, and but with Clint, we've created the Conservation Corp or Foundation for colubrids and colubroids, and we got the LLC, and it's just all blowing up. So that's really my big focus, is focusing on the other stuff. And then I'm going to be breeding some Pitchophis, my Floridana, and obviously false water cobras and some hognose snakes. So that's that. And then the other biggie for us is, of course, Colubrid Fest, which I encourage everybody and anyone to get their butts to Colubrid Fest if they can,
Yeah.
because if you like colubroids, which nitrocenes are in there, colubrids, uh, it's the greatest herpetocultural thing I do every year. And because I literally made it, Clint and I made it what we thought a reptile show should be, but we say it's more of an experience. And I know that sounds kind of like douchey, but at the same time, it's true. Because like the show is the last day. The first day and a half is just getting a bunch of colubrid nerds together so they can nerd out, and then we do all of the talks during the one day. We do have our auction to raise the money for conservation, but yeah, so that's what I'm focusing mostly on.
Yeah, and that I've seen that show, and it's like the top one on my list because I'm a colubrid guy. The only reason I
Mm-hmm.
have boas and pythons is for my outreach. That's I probably wouldn't
Yeah,
have. I'd have maybe my hog island and yellow. Like that's it.
yeah,
Um, but man, you say maybe it sounds douchey, but when you look at it in the sense that I think everybody knows you don't mean it that way, and not only
no,
that, but like you guys, the conservation aspect of it, I think is so awesome because
yeah,
I don't think you see enough conservation in herpetoculture today,
no,
at all. Like, and it's kind of sad, and to see you guys pushing for that, which will inevitably get others to push for things like that, is important. And I think over the next half decade, whatever, it'll start to make a huge difference because I mean, I think every expo should be at least have a little bit of like, these animals aren't they're in the wild too, right? For the
yeah.
most part.
Oh,
And that's important.
one of the reasons. So what's really cool for me is that I somehow have managed to weasel my way into like every camp. I, I'm a I'm a conservationist before I had herpetoculture. So I know the pros to herpetoculture in the eyes of an agency. I know obviously the negatives in the eyes of the agency. But now I'm a private keeper again. So I can hop over here and be private herpetoculturalist, and I know the perception of conservation agencies by private herpetoculturalists. I mean, I don't know how it is in Canada. I can say down here in the States, there's with a lot of people, not everybody, with a lot of people, there's no real love lost between a Department of Natural Resources and a private herpetoculturalist, because the regulations oftentimes appear to be nonsensical. At the same time, as a conservationist, I understand why they are nonsensical. Conservation officers are not herpetologists.
Yeah.
So you can't expect a conservation officer to know how to identify all these animals. And so by protecting all the native species, you give them a field guide, you give them a pamphlet, they can then bump into somebody and know whether or not the animal that they have in their house is like protected or not. So like I understand all that. But it is what is truly nonsensical is letting our egos drive whether we do conservation or not. On the private side, if we do a lot of good and we lead by example and we go out there as private herpetoculturalists and don't just make this all about making a buck, but make it about making a buck or keeping an animal, and then maybe give a little money back to conservation. Because guess what? Conservation's underfunded everywhere.
Yeah.
If you
Especially
really
these
want to
days.
get people, to listen to you, whether we like it or not, money can make people be like, okay, I'm listening now. I've said this on the show multiple times. Clint, this is where Clint being a marketing guy is a godsend. Like, I'm the nerd. I can come up with the idea. Clint's the guy who's like, oh, I know how to make that happen. You know what I mean? But like, what would happen if all these large reptile shows that have thousands of people going through the gate, what if you bump the cost of your ticket from $20 to $25? People are still going to pay $25. There's very few people who are not going to pay an extra $5 to get into a Tinley or, the large show you guys have in Toronto. And then you just basically take that $5, put it in a pot, and then hand it over to the state or hand it over to a conservation agency or hand it over to an NGO like the one Clint and I have, and be like, all right, here you go. You got this money now. Go do good. If we did that model, it will at the very least get the conservation folks to the table with the herpetoculturalists, because and maybe we can have a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big driving forces with Colubrid and Colubroid Radio and Colubrid Fest is it's just like, it's all about community, and it's about getting people to bring their freaking walls down, realize we all love the same thing, which is snakes. And so why don't we all just talk, why don't we do things to preserve them? Like, you going out and doing outreach, I can't tell you how many snake talks I've given in my life. At this point in my life, I realized that those outreach talks were among the most powerful acts of conservation I've done in my life. And I didn't know, I knew they were important. I never like belittled them, but I've been at the table with important people and thought like, this is what I've worked so hard to get to this part of the game. And then I walk away at the end of the day and I'm like, I don't know if I changed the damn heart or mind.
Yeah.
But if you give a really good talk and get people to realize, maybe they aren't that bad, that you save some snakes that way, that's more powerful than what I did with a bunch of bureaucrats.
Yeah.
So anyway, but yeah, no, this conservation piece, that's something that Clint and I are very passionate about. We're always going to be pushing that, and then we just try to create an environment where we could be a model for how this could maybe work in the future. So there you go.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's to say the least very admirable. And I see the vision, and I definitely see it going. Not that I know shit, but I see it going. I see it being important.
You probably know more than you think.
So can we, while we peter out here, Zach, can you plug whatever it is you want, CCR, all that stuff, please?
Sure.
Your own stuff.
So if you haven't listened to it, give mine Clint's podcast a listen if you don't mind. And we're on YouTube if you want to watch our ugly mugs and instead of listening to it on your phone, that's fine. But Spotify, Apple, podcast, I use Castbox, which I guess according to my students makes me old.
Yeah, what the hell is that?
Yeah, it's a podcast app. I'm too freaking cheap to pay for Spotify. And then they were like, you don't really have to. And I was like, well, fine. But anyway, so Colubrid and Colubroid Radio, though, give that a listen. And then NPR Network's our network. So like Morelia Python Radio, Reptile Fight Club, Carpets and Coffee, all those wonderful shows. I endorse those. And then if you want to find out about what I'm doing, you can look up anything West Liberty University that involves biology. I'm involved with it because I'm the guy that's an admin for all of our Facebook pages. Our herpetology lab is really cool. It's new. This is the first actual year where I was like, okay, I'm going to be the crazy asshole that has 2 research labs instead of 1.
Hell yeah.
That studies 2 completely different animals that aren't really related to each other. But it's, you only live once. That's what I tell everybody. So, but you can look up the West Liberty University Herpetology Lab, Applied Herpetology and Herpetoculture Lab, the Crayfish Lab. You can look that up there on Facebook as well. And then you can find me, Zac Loughman, on Facebook, Dr. Crawdad on Instagram. And so, yeah, that's where you can find all the stuff that I'm doing. And I'm not posting much lately because I'm just swamped, but I am trying to give updates on the book.
Yep.
Because people want to know that it's getting done, and it is getting done. It has to get. I have to write a crayfish book. Like I have an actual grant to write a crayfish book, and I was able to keep people at arm's length and give me 26 to get the hognose book done, as long as I'm working on pictures and other things for this Crawdad book. So like the hognose book will be done at the end of this year because there's really no other option. So
Awesome.
That's coming out.
Perfect. We'll keep an eye on that, and we'll post it and stuff on our page too when
Awesome.
it comes up. Check out the description for all the stuff that Mr. Zac has said, and you can find all that stuff there too. Zac, I really appreciate you coming on and yapping with me.
Sure.
I'd love to have you back
fun.
on at some point to nerd out more
Absolutely.
about water snakes and stuff. We'll have to get those other guys on too. But thanks very much, Zac. I appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Creature Crossing. Please check the description for social media links, Patreon, and more. Feel free to subscribe and leave us a review. The song used for our intro and our outro is called The Snake Eater's Palace, Outer Heaven by Audio Mocha, Anime Vivi, and Endless Repeat, which we found at ocremix.org. Thanks again for listening.